go back to talking about who presents the cases in your office. And ultimately, somebody that is that A-type personality, someone that is very friendly, can schmooze, as I like to call it, but ultimately makes the patient feel comfortable, but still stresses the benefits all the way through the presentation. So I talk about videotaping your own presentation. And I mean, we all have a phone, so you can very easily present your own 5-minute presentation and watch it and take a look at how often you spoke about benefits, but also in your presentation manner and your style. And, were you comfortable, and is the patient comfortable? I see a lot of my dentists, they'll lean up against their counters when they're presenting, and the patient is in a sitting position. Again, you want to be eye to eye with your patient. You want to be able to mirror them in many respects. If they're crossing their arms, you should cross your arms. There's a lot of little interesting little sales techniques and whatever it happens to be, but ultimately it's making the patient feel comfortable. I'm a little over 6'1", a fairly tall fellow, and I've always noticed when I was ever at trade shows, any of my dental trade shows, and I've been at hundreds of them, you name it, every single dental trade show at one point or another, many of them multiple. And if somebody was shorter than myself, which was more often than not, I always had a tendency to not necessarily slouch, but I would literally try to make myself feel a little bit or be a little bit shorter so that I was on the same level as they were. So that little bit of detail to me helps in people being able to relate to you and vice versa. So the video concept, the video aspect, I would recommend to all of you to videotape your presentations. And I'm going to talk about an awful lot as far as the sales cycle and exactly going off to team members, because getting a patient to say yes to treatment is about the team. It's not just the dentist letting the patient know what they need and then ultimately walking them out to the front desk and trying to get them to schedule. I mean, that's a part of it, but ultimately the whole team really needs to be involved. I've told assistants many times over the years that they're key in this, because when the dentist leaves the room, and many of the assistants, it's their duty to dismiss the patient. I mean, those patients will ultimately turn to that assistant on many occasions and say to them, do you think I really need this crown? Or do you think I really need this orthodontic care, this treatment, et cetera, et cetera? So having all team members trained on exactly what to say and how to say it is very beneficial for both you, and certainly stressing the benefits to all the team members really need to be on the same page. So going back to video, I always highly recommend that you're videotaping yourself. And I give this example. I don't know if any of you out there golf. I'm a bit of a golfer, not a great one, but I'm about a 10 handicap, so I'm not too bad at the game. And a number of years ago, I was sitting at about an 18, 19 handicap, and I went for a couple of golf lessons. And the very first golf lesson, the trainer had his iPad with him, and he videotaped my swing. I mean, it took all of 5 seconds for him to go through this process, and he said, come on inside. So here I am outside, I've got my glove on, I'm holding my club, I'm expecting he's gonna start showing me things, and it's like, okay, so inside we went, and up on the wall, he already had a video set up of a gentleman by the name of Martin Keimer, who had won the US Open that year. And then he put video up beside it and ran both videos at the same time, then ran them separately. And Martin Keimer had this beautiful swing. It was like unbelievable. I looked like I was a giraffe trying to hit a golf ball. I mean, it was horrible. But it allowed me to vastly improve because we kept taking videos through the process, and I was able to improve greatly, and it really took my handicap down. So video can help in many respects, and I would strongly recommend that you utilize this tool in your office and do it at least once a month. Have an actual meeting inside your office where it's set for just how are we going to present cases. and go back on some of the cases that you've presented that month, and how well it went, and why did we get Mrs. Smith to say yes to treatment that day, but why did we not get Mr. Jones, whatever it happens to be. And if you work on it and you practice it, I promise you, sales and working on your sales techniques, working on your presentation techniques, having proper handoffs, making sure that all team members are trained on what to say and when to say it, how to say it, having the system in place of these handoffs, it is hugely important. With COVID right now, I've been seriously reduced as far as the offices that I've gone in. Obviously, number one, because so many dental offices were closed. I'm back in a couple of offices now, and one of my offices, their sales system is not very good at all. And it's a direct result of not taking the proper time at the proper time. So it really becomes a poor presentation. Many times, the presentation is pushed off, and they try to reschedule that patient in to actually make the presentation, which is okay, but I do not recommend that. I always mention, or certainly suggest, strike when the eye, when somebody's in your office and you have first presented to them, that's the best time to actually get them to say yes to treatment. So there's a lot to this, the psychology of sales, the systems, you need to train it. Most offices have no idea that they should be tracking it. Most offices don't track it. And even when they track it, they don't track it properly. And I'll get into that in a few minutes. What are we selling? What are you selling? Benefits, benefits, benefits. Put a list together, and if you'd like to email me or contact us, I can send you a standard list of what we regard as the benefits for each individual treatment. But Mrs. Smith, the benefits for her, she may have something obscure as far as why she wants to get this crown. And you need to make sure that whatever that major benefit is for her, you want to be presenting that throughout your presentation. And you certainly want to have all team members aware of it. Your assistant, obviously your hygienist should know about it when she's handing back to yourself for hygiene checks. But the benefits are hugely, hugely important, and you always want to be going back to benefits. So I can't stress that enough. And where is my slides? Here we go. So the second part of this is how your office is laid out as far as how you're going to be closing treatment and presenting treatment. Too often I see presentations made, and again, I can reference one of my offices in Toronto that I'm back in now. And the front reception desk is where the presentations are occurring. And many times there's two presentations going on there at the same time when one or two patients are standing in line behind these presentations. At the same time, there's two or three people sitting in the reception area. And if you think to close the majority of your cases in that type of environment, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do that. Number one, the psychology of the whole process. If I'm a patient, the last thing I want to be doing is the financial situation is, or my fear factor, what my comfort level is, et cetera, et cetera. It could be very embarrassing to a patient. But even more important to that, if you dismiss me out of your treatment room and I a dismissal counter where there's other people around, there's usually something else that I can see in that area that I cannot see in the treatment room that affects me psychologically. And believe it or not, that's the front door. Ultimately, most people don't really enjoy going to visit the dentist. And I know myself, I'm a fairly educated man. Even though I really like my hygienist, she's a nice lady. I'm actually going to be in her chair tomorrow at 11:15 in the morning. Am I looking forward to it? Absolutely not. I do not enjoy going to the dentist, even though I have spent my whole life in dental office. It's kind of ironic. And most people, if you ask them, they really don't look forward to going to the dentist. So if you dismiss a patient into an area where they can see the front door, I promise you it's a rather large distraction, and it will affect your ability to get patients or treatments. So setting up a proper system of where you're presenting your cases is hugely important. A lot of offices can do this, a lot of them cannot. If you can present in your treatment rooms, and I understand only because of COVID right now, it makes it a little bit more difficult just from changing rooms over. But if you do have one or two extra rooms in your office, or at least if your consulting room is not near the front door, I would strongly suggest you utilize those areas. Well, if I'm still in the same dental chair that I've been in through my hygiene visit, the doctor comes in, the hygienist has communicated to me through my hygiene visit that she has a concern about one of my teeth. Then the doctor comes in, he takes a look at the x-rays and recommends that I have a crown on that particular tooth, and then lets me know that he's going to make arrangements to get it scheduled, and he's going to have Cindy or Lisa or whomever from his office come in just to let me know what the arrangements would be. I'm going to be an awful lot more closable and still comfortable still chair. And when the treatment coordinator comes in, I like to refer to as the dental mode. If you take me to the reception desk and I see the front door, I'm no longer in that mode. I'm in the mode of, okay, it's time to get out of here. I didn't really want to come here in the first place, and I really don't want to get that crown right now. So you lose me. And I can't tell you how many offices, this one office that I'm talking about in particular that I'm back in right now, they had in the last year well over $1 million in unscheduled treatment in their files. That's a fair amount of money. Now, unfortunately, I have yet a dental software program that tracks unscheduled treatment properly. And what I mean by that, if you've given a patient 2 or 3 different options, generally it will total that amount, and it becomes the amount of unscheduled treatment for that patient. So of course, if you have 300 patients or 400 patients that have not scheduled their treatment, times 2 or 3 treatment plans, that number can become quite large. But ultimately, even a practice, and most of my practices every year, before I've begun with them, they will show unscheduled treatment numbers well in excess of $1 million. And again, that's part of the problem. So I get my dental offices to somewhat do it manually, but it's done on a daily basis, and it's quite easy. If you don't track what you're doing, you don't know how good you are at doing it. It would, again, I go back to the golf story. It would be like me fixing my swing and working with this trainer, this teacher to learn how to golf better. And then when I got out on the golf course, I didn't pay attention to the score. I didn't pay attention to where the ball was ever going. So ultimately, you need to track what you're doing, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit in a few minutes. But ultimately, mapping out exactly where you're going to be presenting your cases is vital, and having the tools available to you in that environment is huge. So to me, the optimum system is the dentist asking the hygienist or the assistant to have the treatment coordinator come in a few minutes and present the case. The treatment coordinator must be prepared, must have all the numbers down, ready to present the case. The assistant or the hygienist, if possible, should try to stay with the treatment coordinator or whoever is presenting the case from the front desk to help them if any sort of clinical questions come up. Even better if that treatment coordinator is a clinical individual. I've had many a good hygienist turn into a treatment coordinator because they know what they're talking about clinically. Ultimately, that is the best handoff system that I've seen. My tracking numbers over the years show me the best place to present in the treatment rooms, and having a handoff system, the whole sales system, the whole process is practiced on a monthly basis. We work on it on a continual basis. And ultimately having all of the members, their roles set up, exactly what they're doing through the whole sales process. And as I say, making sure that you've got the proper to set yourself up for success as far as case presentation is concerned. Having that flow, the proper structure inside, and every single office is different. I've seen offices that were set up beautifully for case presentation. I have offices I've gone into where they've been horrible situations. Will you personally know the best situation? I really don't know whether you will have that ability to do that or not. The only thing I can is to take nothing else from this presentation tonight other than benefits, 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 and present in the treatment room. Can't help as far as our concerned. Everything else is very important, but those two factors, where you're presenting, the fact that you're presenting benefits, patient benefits, what are their hot buttons, are the two key things that you need to take away from this little 60-minute presentation that I'm giving you right now. But having that structure inside the office, the proper area to present, having all the team members involved in the process. Can you tell I'm a big fan of repetition, because I keep going back and repeating the same things through this process, only because I know I've had some offices where I've been in their office for 2 different visits for 2 days. And I come back on my visits and all the team is sitting there, and I'll pick on maybe one of the junior team members, somebody that maybe doesn't have confidence in front of the whole group, in front of the group, and I'll turn to that young lady and I'll say, "So what do we sell, Cindy?" I put the pressure on her. And it's amazing how many times they don't come up with the word benefits. You need to drive it home to your team. You need to keep working with your team to let them know benefits, benefits, benefits. That's what people buy. I mean, if you go out to purchase, why do you buy? Well, you buy it for 2 reasons. You either want it or you need it. And it's based on how it benefits you as a consumer. So I can't stress it enough. Benefits, benefits, benefits. So from there, if you have the system set up properly in your office, I'm not sure if I missed that. There we go. Okay. I hope everybody can see that okay. So one of the biggest problems that I find in my dental office, and I say this almost to every single one of my dentists: slow down. You are so schedule based, and I understand that. I mean, you know, the schedules get crammed with as much as you possibly can do, and you motor as fast as you can, and team members don't get lunches, and you go over at the end of the day, but that affects case presentation, I promise you. I can't tell you how often I've seen a case presented that, you know, is a $10, $12, $20,000 case that was presented improperly. It was presented without visual or proper visual tools, which are vital, and I'm going to get to that in a few moments. And was not done in the right area, was not necessarily done by the right person. So many different factors, but it was rushed. Talk about the 5-minute presentation. I'd like to see you pretty well cover the bases in 5 minutes. That doesn't necessarily mean the presentation is over in 5 minutes. There can be questions, there can be an awful lot of repetition and reassurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The basic 5-minute continue to go back to. But ultimately, I see most of you speed through your presentations. I remember watching a movie called, and I use this example all the time. It was called For the Love of the Game. It's a Kevin Costner movie. If you ever get to watch it, I thought it was pretty good personally. It's a movie about baseball. It's a love story at the same time. But Kevin Costner has this. He's a pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, and it's the second last day of the ball season. For his career, though, he's had this saying when he gets up on the mound before he throws the first pitch of an inning, and he goes, clear the mechanism. And my mechanism, which is during case presentation, you need to be able to basically get everything else out of your mind except what you're presenting at that moment in time, and be 100% focused as far as that particular patient is concerned. Make sure that you understand exactly what they want, what they feel the benefits of this treatment would be for them, and focus on it. Clear everything else out of your head. I know that's very difficult to do. I've been a salesman all my life, and I've been in a few interesting situations in my life where my personal situation could have very easily affected how I presented or closed business. And I was always very, very good at when I put my hand on the handle of the door to walk in, the only thing I was thinking about how I could benefit that dental office. And you need to be able to do the same thing. You need to be able to basically clear the mechanism. Take your time in closing cases. I can't tell you how often I've seen someone presenting, as I say, a $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 case, and scurried off to take care of a couple of fillings because they were running a touch, and didn't give that patient that we were presenting a fairly large case to the amount of time that they needed to make the decision to say yes. Thus, most dental offices, average dental offices, through any fiscal year, will have well over $1 million in uncompleted dentistry sitting in the files because you didn't take the time to present the cases properly. And I promise you, I videotaped them, I've watched them, I've sat there and watched presentations like this for 30 years. And you need to take your time and properly. So, I understand that you need to present different options, but you also need to kind of stick to your guns and stick to your guns in a number of different ways. Some of you seem to feel embarrassed to let people know what your services cost, for example. And I can't tell you how often I've seen dentists discount their dentistry even before the patient says a word. Mrs. Smith, we normally charge $6,000 for Invisalign, but you've been a great patient, so we're gonna do that for $40,000 for you. Well, I have to admit I'm not a Donald Trump fan, but he talks about the art of negotiation. I really don't know whether he's that good at it or not based on his 3 years in office, but let me not get political, but ultimately negotiation, and you really don't want to be giving things away without proper negotiation and working for it. So, and the same would go for settling to do a large filling when a crown is really what you need to be doing. So I always say to my dentist, stick to your guns. I mean, from a case acceptance point of view, you need to be passionate about what you're doing, about what you're presenting. And I mean, a lot of my say it, I just want you to be passionate about it. The more you are, to me, I just feel you have to be passionate, and you definitely have to take your time in making the proper presentations. Set yourself up for success, folks. It really is hugely important. Sharky, I'm not sure if you're still with me or not. My video is in front of my slide here, so I can't remember exactly what the title of the slide says, but I don't know if anybody can kind of move my video over to the right, or I'm not sure if that works or not. But as I say, each team member is involved in case.
If you hover over your
Uh-huh.
screen, if you just hover over your like
Sorry.
face, you can able to move it right, left, up. Just hover over your video of your face, and you can move it
Yes.
up, down, right, and left.
That doesn't. But you know what's okay. I see that my.
Does that work?
I've seen something here different, so that should be okay. So. Just in the whole handoff process, I'm not a big fan of scripts, but I am a big fan of bullet points and having little bullets of information as far as handoffs are concerned. So I like to recommend 4 different closing techniques. The first one is the assumptive close. The assumptive close basically is this is just going to happen. We're going to set up a date to get you scheduled, and we'll get things started for you. And ultimately, teaching team members to utilize the assumptive close to me becomes very, very effective. There is another close called the alternative close. The alternative close basically is alternative from a pricing point, alternative as far as treatment is concerned, alternative timing, et cetera, et cetera. Your team really needs to be trained on these types of techniques. I also teach the Ben Franklin close, which is basically the pros and cons close. It's talking about all the benefits. It's also talking about the issues or the problems that will occur if you don't get the dentistry done. That's part of the benefits. So the Ben Franklin close is a very effective one. So learning how to utilize proper handoffs, using proper closing techniques, and as I say, training on them every day, working on them all the time, repetition, and videotaping them all the time. It will help your practice an awful lot to a huge degree. I have some practices out there that close easily 90 to 95% of what is presented because they're passionate about what they're doing. They take their time. They've trained on it. They've worked on it. They've practiced it. And when they get a new team member in, they give them a little booklet that I give them on team training as far as sales is concerned right off the bat. So they read it, and then in turn, they get engaged in the ongoing working on it and the training of it. And you need to spend at least 2 or 3 hours a month on this to continue to be good at it. So the handoff process, hugely important, and always looking at it from an assumptive point of view. I always tell my teams the best assumptive close is ultimately just going to the scheduler and saying to the team member, let's get you scheduled to get this done. We can do this on Tuesday, August 16th at 10 a.m. And I'm a big fan of keeping control of that scenario. I can teach your front desk people to almost get 100% closing rate on rebooking hygiene or making sure your hygienists have that. The best way to get an appointment rebooked is to select a date in the calendar, 6 months or so down the same day, same time. Write it on a little card. I see a lot of team members now say, "Would you like a card?" Well, I teach my team members to utilize those inexpensive little cards as an assumptive closing tool to make sure that every patient walks out of your office with their next hygiene appointment. And that's vital to the patient treatment, the patient's health, but it's also vital to your practice. So utilizing the assumptive close in all aspects of this becomes extremely important. So having little bullet points on all of your services and bullet points, not necessarily full scripting. I'm not a fan of full scripting because it sounds like a script. It sounds like it's all been scripted. But if you just touch on and make sure you touch on key points through each presentation, utilize bullet points. If you utilize those bullet points, you'll pretty well get all the information in there, and the patient will have a much better idea as far as exactly how it's going to work for them and how it's going to benefit for them. So this is very, very key. Number one, I can't begin to tell you how often I see my doctors, staff members, etc., try to close a case and don't use proper professional visual tools. How many people I've seen draw a tooth and try to draw what a crown looks like to go over top of it is really not a good visual tool. I'm sure some of you have good visual tools. There's some good products out there. Certainly, if you'd like to get in touch with me, I could give you some very good ideas. I could even come into your office or have one of my team members come into your office and show you some very unique visual tools that'll help you as far as case closing is concerned. I have one tool that all of my practices, when they see it, they look at me and say, wow, that's amazing. And it's extremely inexpensive, but it's a visual tool. If you don't have visual tools, strong visual tools inside your office, you lose an opportunity. I can't tell you how often I have heard a patient when they utilize a visual tool that I could recommend to you, and they look at this visual on and they say, oh, I understand now, or I get it now. It's amazing how many patients won't tell you that they get it because they're scared to they're embarrassed. They don't want to tell you that they don't get it. So you need to slow your presentations down. Use visual communication as much as possible. Visual communication, patients will retain 60 to 70% of what you present visually. They will recall anywhere from 5 to 7% of what you verbalized. That's when you start to get yourself also in trouble. A lot of patients will think you said something, but ultimately you didn't. So utilizing visual tools as much as possible. That's why the Ben Franklin close is very key. The Ben Franklin close is a very visual tool, and I could, in your office setting, take you through exactly how the Ben Franklin close or the pros and cons close works, so that patients have a visual tool or a visual reminder of exactly what was said through the presentation. And certainly getting patients to sign off on their treatment prior to treatment is hugely important. But the visual tools in conjunction with patient benefits, if you're using the visual tools ongoing through your presentations. I have a young lady down in Dallas, and she would give her presentations. She spoke very quickly, a very, very lovely young lady. Her presentations were very quick. And on numerous occasions, I asked some of the patients at the end, so did you 100% understand? Or I even asked a couple of patients, can you explain to me what she explained to you? And they just couldn't. She was so fast and used no visual tool whatsoever. I was able to convince her to slow down and then utilize this visual tool to the point where she carried it around the office. It's just a little iPad, but she carried it around the office with her continually because opportunities arose continually to be communicating to patients at all sorts of different times and at all sorts of different levels as far as what was happening as far as their treatment was concerned, or even something as simple as their hygiene program was concerned. And having that visual tool with her on a continual basis, she maintained that it helped her tremendously as far as making sure that patients were saying yes to treatment. And not only saying yes to treatment, there's a little term in sales called ABC. I use it all the time. And ABC stands for always be closing. And what I mean by that is you need to be continually repeating the benefits to patients, not only before they get treatment, not only just before they go in to get the treatment, not only after they've just left the treatment room, but even on the visits afterwards. You can certainly say to a patient, Mrs. Smith, it's really good we got that one tooth crowned, because number one, it reassures the patient they made the right decision, which they did. But secondly, it also will encourage them to accept treatment the next time. So ultimately, having a proper visual tool that can be reinforcing, that can be helping you through case presentation, I mean, you've got to use visual tools. Visual communication is so much better than verbal communication, I promise you. So use your visual tools. My phone number and website address is at the bottom of all the slides here. So if you have any questions as far as any of these things that I'm recommending, or any of these ideas, absolutely, please feel free to email me or get on our website or give me a phone call. I'm happy to give you more detail, and certainly happy to come into your office. If you're in Canada, if you're in the United States, even though I love coming down to the US, right now is probably not the best time. So, Sharky, how are we for time? Sharky, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. So about 5-10 minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. That'll give me enough time to try to finish this off. So,
and go to the Q&A. We got a few Q&A questions here.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, but where, when, and how to ask for the sale. Again, you need to set yourself up for success as much as possible, and understand the psychology of the sale. I can't repeat enough to my offices, the best location to present is the treatment rooms. But having proper inter-office communication, and don't be afraid to do your inter-office communication right in front of the patient. There's so many opportunities to repeat something in front of the patient. The hygienist can mention it through the hygiene visit that she has a concern about a particular tooth. Then when the dentist comes in, again, I can't tell you how often a dentist will come into the room and ask the patient, "So, how are things going?" Well, the hygienist is the one that should be letting the dentist know right off the bat what the situation is, what the hygienist has talked about with the patient, what her concern is, et cetera, et cetera. So now, not only did the patient hear it from the hygienist during the hygiene appointment, she now also hears it, or he hears it, the patient hears it, through the handoff from the hygienist to the doctor, to the dentist. Then the dentist goes through the process of the presentation. The dentist needs to utilize the visual tools. The dentist needs to talk about the benefits of the treatment. Then in turn, hand the patient back to the hygienist, and a perfect opportunity to use the Assumptive Close. Cindy, let's get Mrs. Smith booked to get this crown taken care of. I'd like to see her as soon as possible. However, be very, very careful. I have a good friend of mine down in Atlanta, and his office is extremely busy, to the point that he was running hygiene out 9-10 months before he could get a new patient in. It was just a very busy practice. But he made the mistake of always promising good patients in the practice. He would say to the assistant or the hygienist, "Let's get them in the next couple of days to get this taken care of." Problem was, there was no room in the schedule to get them in a couple of days. So what you say and how you say it sets the rest of the team up for success. And the rest of the team needs to communicate with each other to make sure that we're not continuing to make the same verbal mistakes that sets the patient's expectations up for one thing and leads to disappointment when the next team member has to do whatever they have to do. So that inter-office communication is extremely important. And you can certainly talk about the situation out in the hallway before you go in to see the patient, but don't be fearful at all of having the one team member hand off to the next team member by presenting to them what you have presented to the patient, because that's repetition and the patient has heard it multiple times. Then when the dentist hands the patient back to the hygienist, obviously there's the first obvious assumptive opportunity to get this patient into the schedule. Even if they don't know exactly what their investment's going to be in that particular procedure, it's a psychological advantage to have it in the schedule. It's almost like a little bit of a commitment that the patient has made because now they're in the schedule. Then the hygienist can let the patient know that they're going to have the treatment coordinator come in, and always refer to the next team member coming in by their name. So Cindy, I'm going to have Marion, our treatment coordinator, come in a few minutes, and she can take you through exactly what your investment will be for this very important treatment. But you're making a really, really good decision to get this crown done. I'll have her come in shortly. So again, it's setting the next team member up for success. And when the treatment coordinator comes in, it's good for the hygienist. Even if the team member knows them, it's always good to make sure that the hygienist is there to hand the patient off to the treatment coordinator. So you never drop the baton. You never want the treatment coordinator to come into the room and there's nobody in the room. You never drop the baton. You hand the baton to the next team member so that in turn there's no miscommunication. So, I mean, this is a huge aspect. This is a huge, an important process, is making sure that the handoff is done properly through the whole process. Another key to this, I mean, I can't even tell you how important this is for your dental office. I mean, all my dentists through the years, okay, we need more patients. We need more patients. Well, yeah. You do need more patients, but need to learn how to present cases. I mean, you could do an awful lot more dentistry seeing a lot fewer patients, and to me, that's a better scenario. Choose a team member that has the ability to present cases. Again, through my experience, 30 years, I can't tell you how many team members I've watched give presentations and they shouldn't have been giving presentations. They just didn't have the personality. They didn't have the technique. They didn't have the talent to present. We're all good at certain things. There are great baseball players. There are great dentists. There's great doctors. There's great politicians. And there's also poor politicians and poor baseball players and poor dentists. And ultimately, you want to set the person up for success as much as possible, but you also want the best person that you could possibly find to present cases. And you want somebody that has a sales ability, that has the ability to be very friendly, someone that is extremely likable, someone that patients can feel comfortable saying yes to. And in all honesty, it's really probably the largest factor in all of this, even though I've taught some not great salespeople many of these techniques, and it has helped them tremendously and helped the practice tremendously. But if you can start off by having an A+ sales representative in your practice closing the cases, that's absolutely huge. So train the team, have that individual team member quarterback it, and you need to track it. And case tracking is extremely important. You need to take a look at your numbers on a daily basis. I always highly stress running a bonus system on collections versus previous collections. And I recommend it doing on a quarterly basis. And to do that, you need to take a look at exactly what you've presented compared to what you collect every single day and every single month. If you track it for a 1-day period of time, that's obviously not a fair process, because you may present an awful lot of dentistry and not collect very much that day. But if you track those numbers out over 9 months, a year, year and a half, 2 years, you can see exactly what your case closing percentage is. And it's vital that your case closing percentage is 75, 80%. You don't want it to be 40%, which is the national average. So I hope I've been able to help you with some of these things that we've got here. If you have any questions, anybody has any thoughts, please fire away. Sharky, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hero, for that. That's those are really great tips. I watched a lot of several of your presentations, and I learn new things every time.
Cool.
So yeah, so feel free, everyone, to enter your questions. I know we have quite a few people from Facebook as well as YouTube. So just type in your questions there. Anyone that's in the webinar, there's a chat section. Enter your questions there. So I see a couple of questions. So let me just look into this. So
You know, it's funny, Sharky. I'm so used to doing live presentations, and I have to admit, I enjoy doing the live ones more because I just like interacting with human beings, and you know, the sales process is a lot about that interaction and its facial expressions. And I mean, I can tell when somebody's getting what I'm saying, and sometimes they'll look at me and Harold, what the heck are you talking about? So it's this is a little bit more difficult for me because I don't have that same interaction that I've had for 30 years of presenting to people.
yeah, something that we need to adjust to, right? Um, let's see here. Oh, so one good question here is that um, let me just kind of read this and rephrase it. Office. So with virtual consultation, teledentistry, how has that changed with the process, and what tools do you recommend?
Sorry, I just want to understand the question. So, what tools do I recommend to present with?
Sorry, so, yeah. So with teledentistry, how has the process changed in the case acceptance process with patients? And are there any tools or technology that you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, from the tools and technology point of view, I mean, Casey's a good system. It's expensive though. One system that I do recommend, and if you want, you can get it through us. It's called DDSGP. It's a great little program. The problem is, and I hate to say it, I'm saying it live here, but the company's horrible to deal with. I mean, trying to order their system is it's extremely difficult, and trying to get passwords from them and work with them, it's very, very difficult. I've got to the point where and it's no more expensive. I mean, we don't charge you any, but we try to help you get it integrated into your office and get it up onto your iPads, because ultimately the company that sells it does a horrible job of communicating and getting people up and running with it. But that's a great program. I mean, you can draw on it. You can do so many different little things on it, and it's pretty inexpensive. I mean, it's like $300 or $400 US. So I would certainly recommend something like that. But ultimately, the most important aspect to me, there's a number of it through the presentation, but certainly the benefits are huge. Having the right team member, the right handoff process, presenting in the right spots. Those are really the four key areas that you need to work on in your offices.
Okay. So another question here is that if you don't accept the case in the office, what should the follow-up process
That's a
be?
really good question. I didn't touch on it at all. Ultimately, you need a tracking system as far as individual patients are concerned. These split those patients up into three groups: A's, B's, and C's. And the people that you feel, I mean, there's been many times in my life that I've given a presentation to somebody and I thought, oh, that's an A person. They're definitely interested. And there's been many occasions where I've given a presentation to somebody and I put them in my C category because I thought, it's amazing. I've had many a C come back to me and say, Harold, we decided to start. And I've had many an A that I wasn't able to get to start. So, you know, never assume, but ultimately, as far as spending time, you need to assume maybe to a small degree. So set up your patients in categories A, B's, and C's and follow up with them I'm still a big fan of the telephone. I'm not a huge fan of emails because you lose a bit of control from that point of view. But as far as a follow-up system, I would certainly be phoning them first. Secondly, if you wanted to send them a synopsis of the benefits of the treatment, that would be good. And then third, make sure that you're prepared in your morning huddle the next time that patient comes back in to be able to discuss it and present it properly again.
Okay. And then, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, just tracking's so important. Most of my offices they don't track because they're so busy. But when you don't track, you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know how good you are at it. And then it's somebody like me that comes in and says, you're not very good at it, but I have no way of proving you're not good at it unless you've tracked something. And generally, the only thing that's been in the office is the unscheduled treatment plans, and that's always over $1 million for a year in any average office. But that number is not accurate. It's never an accurate number, but still, I've got offices that are $2-3 million in a year. Still, the way the softwares track it, you've got to think that at least 2/3 of that number is going to be correct. That's a huge number. But the dentist doesn't pay any attention to it because he's so busy doing 2 fillings in the next room. So
when you say 2/3 is accurate, do you mean that 2/3 could have converted into actual cases?
Well, see, what happens is all the software programs, let's say I recommended 3 different treatment plans to a particular patient. Maybe an implant crown, a bridge, or a partial. So I've offered 3 different solutions. The partial is $1,500. The bridge is $3,000. The crown or the implant crown is $5,000. So what the software programs will do is take the $5,000, $1,500 and total it, and that becomes the amount of treatment that's unscheduled. Well, the patient obviously is not going to take all 3 of those. They're only going to select one of them. So I always say to my doctors, you need to select the highest amount as part of your unscheduled treatment, because that was the best treatment plan, and that was really what you wanted the patient to accept. That was the best treatment plan for them. So of that $9,500, $5,000 of it is really the part of it that's unscheduled. So when you see these offices get unscheduled treatment amounts for their whole office of the office I was in yesterday, in the last year, it's $1.2 million. And I even think it's higher than that base number. But it comes down only because sometimes there's going to be 2 or 3 treatment options to that particular patient, and it totals it instead of just giving the highest number. But even so, I've never been in an office where their case presentation couldn't be vastly improved and the tracking system be vastly improved right along with it. Shark, you do great things as far as getting new patients in the door. I can't tell you how many of the offices fumble the ball when that new patient comes in. Total fumble. And it's sad. They spend, it costs a lot of money to get patients in the door. That it's not easy to do it. And then they don't do it right when they get there. It doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense at all.
Yep. That's the easiest part, right? Is when they're in the office.
Yeah.
Right there, right?
I refer to something called POP, and that's called the point of purchase. Retailers refer to it all the time. But that's when you want to get the patient to say yes. And I'm not saying if a brand new patient comes in and you try to present them a $20,000 or $30,000 treatment plan, I don't necessarily recommend that. But let's get them to at least accept a little piece of it and start slowly. Because again, there's details to that too. Take office personnel through and make sure to understand when is the time to go for a $20,000 case, and should we maybe only present 3,000 of it now, and we'll let them know about what else is happening later on. We let them know there are, here's everything that needs to be done, but where's the three teeth that we really need to concentrate on? Let's get these taken care of, and then we can take a look at the other items afterwards. So, I mean, I really get excited about treatment presentation, but it's an art. There's such an art to it, but in front of it, there's a science. You have to set the systems up and get yourself prepared for it, and then you need to have the proper presentation skills and closing skills to be able to get the patients to say yes. I mean, every office gets at least 40% of the people to say yes. That's the national average. It's the offices that get 75, 80, 85, 90%. Those are the offices that are doing really well.
So from your experience, realistically, how low can you bring the unscheduled cases? Like, for example, if an office has $1 million in unscheduled procedures, and you come in and they do everything properly, from your experience, how much can they actually bring that down?
I'll tell you, they could bring it down to as low as 5%. I have a lady out in Scarborough. She's retired now, but she was an absolute superstar presenter, closer. She had just an amazing personality, but they also did all the things to set her up properly. And the system was in place, the visual tools, the handoffs, the closing areas, everything was all the ducks were in a row, and they had Wayne Gretzky at the end of it putting the puck in the net. So it was, and for my American friends, they had Walter Payton taking the ball over the goal line, or Patrick Mahomes. I mean, ultimately, you need the superstar to ultimately close the cases, but you need all the structure and the systems and the training for all the team members in advance of it to set them up for success. So,
perfect.
Yeah.
So let's take one more question here. So with each of the case presentation, is it always the same? What if each person is the different type of learners, like visual, audio, etc.? Do you always go through the same presentation?
No, I mean, presentations, that's why I say you want a superstar at the end, somebody that can read the person they're communicating to. I've been in sales all my life, and I can tell when somebody's with me and when they're not. And when I'm presenting, it's important for me to do everything I possibly can, tell a few jokes, do whatever it is to get people to pay attention to what I'm doing. And no different in a dental office. But every single presentation is different. The systems are the same. The cycle could more than likely is going to be the same. I mean, it's again, I refer to sports. I'm a bit of a sports fan, but football teams practice. And they practice the same plays, and they practice the same defense, and they practice all these things continually. Game time comes and something happens that they've got to adapt. They've got to change how they do it. No difference here. That's why having a superstar at the end of the cycle catches an awful lot of those and gets an awful lot of those individuals to say yes to treatment. But having the systems in place and the proper handoffs and focusing on the benefits in front of it it's absolutely vital. But those presentations, I mean, they'll absolutely change. You'll see different things happening and different ways of doing it. But ultimately, it's that person at the end of the rainbow that needs to be the superstar to close the cases. So,
and so is that usually the dentist, or is that could be anyone? Is it usually one?
I'm sorry.
So is it like
I prefer? Yeah, I prefer it not to be the dentist. Having said that, I have some dentists in some offices that I wouldn't let anybody else in their office do it other than the dentist. I mean, I've got some dentists that are great salespeople. I have some dentists that are they're horrible dentists and great salespeople, and they're successful. I have some dentists that are amazing clinicians, but they're horrible salespeople, and they've never worked on getting people to say yes to treatment, and they're horribly unsuccessful. And that's always a shame when I see a dentist who's really good, or she's really good at what they do, but nobody's buying what they're selling. So
Okay. So we got a couple of
So,
questions, but we're out of time. What's the best way to reach out to you? Email or?
yeah, my email is the best. I'm HM at Consulting Dentists. That's with an S at the end. So HM at consultingdentists.com.
Perfect, perfect.
Okay.
So one last question to end it.
Okay.
What main tip can you give for an office? What's one thing that they can do to improve the case acceptance? And before you give us that answer, you could think about it for a second. I just want to
Okay.
talk about the upcoming webinars that we have scheduled. So tomorrow we have Ryan Sun Key of RBC Financial. So he will be talking about how to save on taxes. People hate taxes, but people love saving on taxes. So he's going to talk about a structure, the family trust, and how you can save quite a bit on it, on taxes, as well as defer the amount. Next week, on Tuesday, July the 14th, we have Dr. Natalie Archer and Joan Hutchings of Safe Dentistry. So they will be talking about the procedures that you need to implement for infection prevention control before and after COVID-19. Actually, Dr. Archer, I met her when I first got into the industry about 10 years ago, and she was talking about infection prevention and the procedures back then, 10 years ago. And she's a big proponent of it, and this is perfect timing. So she's been doing this for a while. So that's very exciting, what you can do to keep your staff and your patient safe. And as well as next Wednesday, I will be talking about the secrets to booking patients from your dental website that your website company doesn't know about. So we track the behavior on websites, every single metric, and there are a few things, about five to 10 things you can do to increase patient bookings on your website. And it just blows my mind that pretty much every single website I've been to, dental websites, they don't implement these. So we always measure before and after. And when one of our clients implements one of these, the booking goes up like crazy. And it's almost common sense. Once I present them, it feels like it is common sense, and it will help you increase your patient booking. So that's for next week, and we have a lot more speakers booked. So go to dentistrybusiness.com. So back to you, Harold, for the last word. So what's one main tip that you can give to dental practices?
Yeah, I stressed it at the start of the presentation, and if there's one little thing that you can improve, it would be benefits. Make sure that you focus on presenting benefits all the time. Always go back to benefits. You'd be surprised how often you don't even do it yourselves. So benefits, benefits,
And what's the
benefits.
best way for the dentist office manager to get the staff to talk about benefits?
Yeah, I would have all of the staff members sit down, or even do it through an email. Have them send the dentist what they feel the benefits are to any treatment that office is offering, and then go over it with the team and make it a set system of making sure that whenever we're talking about implants or orthodontics or whatever it happens to be in the office, that we're bringing up these 5 or 6 key benefits from the patient's perspective.
Perfect, perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
And that'll help. That'll help. But you've got to practice it. You have to practice.
So Harold, benefits, 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 and
Okay?
practice, practice, practice.
Sharky.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Now you'll be redirected to Dentistry Business, and you can register for all the upcoming webinars. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharky. Have a good night. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.